Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Lauren. This is Reads with Lauren and thanks for joining me this morning. I thought I'd jump on, have my morning coffee with you guys and have a chat about my 2023 data and my book goals for this year. So I read a lot of books last year and I have a habit of not being able to be decisive. So I've been using 3 different book apps to track my books. And I thought it'd be fun to have a chat through the Storygraph data that represents my year in a nutshell. The beauty of Storygraph is that it breaks down all sorts of data. It's not just pages read and reviews. It breaks down genre, it breaks down mood, it breaks down the amount of pages in a book you read. It's just started recording audiobooks as minutes instead of pages, so you also have a breakdown of all of the hours of that. But it's a lot of fun. So grab a cuppa, let's sit down together and have a chat about my data, and then we'll go into a little bit more about what my goals are for this year. I just recently released my 24 books in 2024 that I must read, so I'm hoping that some of the goals that I have this year will coincide with that and I'll be able to get a really good reading year in. So let's chat together. We had a 2023 reading goal of 150 books. I surpassed that and read 173% of my goal because I managed 260 books. The year before I had done 200 books and it wasn't really a plan to read more. In fact, I made my book goal 150 so that I could read less. Yeah, I ended up setting my goal for a little bit lower last year in the hopes that I wouldn't be spending as much time reading. However, the year was pretty dissociating. So 260 books. I had a pages goal of 40,000 pages and I read 186% of that at 74,506 pages. That sounds like a lot, but I read a lot of graphic novels and a lot of manga. That brought the pages up quite a bit. It also did bring up the book number. In regards to moods, so my top 4 moods were adventurous, mysterious, lighthearted, and dark, which is interesting. I think that previous years they've been mostly adventurous, mysterious, dark, and emotional, which is number 5. But it looks like I've been reading more lighthearted books this year. My bottom 4 were hopeful, challenging, sad, and relaxing. I can tell you now that based upon the books on my TBR at the moment and like the order of preference, I think there's going to be a lot more sad as time goes on. Pace of books. So I read mostly fast-paced, and I would say that that is probably due to Jodie Taylor and the St. Mary's Chronicles because they are ridiculously fast-paced. I've never read anything so fast-paced. Sometimes it's hard to keep up. It's that fast-paced, but in such a good way. Such a good way. You're like, wait, weren't we just in this century? Why are we in this century already? Like, very fast-paced. Medium with 40% and slow with 16%. So I'm not a huge fan of slow-paced books. So onto page numbers. So we've got 53% of the books that I read were less than 300 pages, which makes a lot of sense with the mangas and the graphic novels and all the comics that I read. 36% 300 to 499 pages, and then 500 plus pages was 11% of my reading. So let's have a look and see. So there was still 21 books that were over 500 pages. So just having a look. Yeah, so it's got the One Piece Omnibus edition, a few of those. We've got a James Patterson. I gave that a go, and as much as I enjoyed the book, I don't like the author and what he stands for, so I decided not to continue. The Stormlight Archive books, Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. That was not the best book, but I'm glad that I got it and read it. The Work Wives by Rachel Johns. That was an interesting book. That was all right. I didn't mind that one. More of the omnibuses. Marian Keyes. Look, I am rereading Marian Keyes this year and I have a lot to say. So if anyone's interested definitely let me know, because I know that it's, you know, I know that she started writing in the 90s and it was the time, but the fat shaming is unbelievable. But yeah, I've been rereading those in the hopes that I will be able to catch up on her writing, and I'm hoping that her writing has improved over time, because she used to be one of my favourite authors. So who else have we got? Oh, we got the Sandman books. I got deluxe editions of the Sandman books, the graphic novels, and read all 4 of them. They were great. Yeah, so 11/22/63, brilliant. Lucy Sullivan is getting married. This was the one that made me so involuntarily angry. So much fat shaming. I hated it, but I got through it. I reread it. I can't believe I used to read these all the time. But anyway, back to the important stuff. Audiobook length. So 72% of my audios were less than 8 hours long, which makes sense. I usually go for the smaller ones, partially because I am nervous about books that, you know, exceed 12 hours, despite the fact that I do listen to them at a faster speed. But also, I record the Doctor Who books that I read separately, even if they are like a big book collection. So that would make that bigger, because I did listen to a lot of Doctor Who audios this year. 16 plus hours. What were they? Oh yeah, A Short History of Nearly Everything. Those Who Wait by Hayley Cass. I couldn't believe that was 21 hours long. That was one that I went through on my drives to and from work, and it took me freaking ages. See What You Made Me Do by Jess Hill. Really interesting book, really triggering and hard to read, but it was I'm very glad that I read that. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I really did enjoy that. That was a lot of fun. The narration for the second character absolutely infuriated me, but I got past it, so that's okay. And The Myth of Normal, yeah, that was a good read too. So in regards to fiction versus non-fiction, so I read 85% fiction and I read 15% non-fiction. That's pretty valid. And in saying that, in 260 books, 15%, that's actually probably a lot more than I usually read. So yeah, it looks like I've read 39 books. Just going through them, I picked up a couple of memoirs, free memoirs off Audible. There was a couple of ARC books. A Trans Man Walks Into a Gay Bar by Harry Nicholas. That was a really good read. 100 Things Productive People Do. That was pretty straightforward. The Diaries of Alan Rickman, that was a struggle to get through. I feel like if he was alive and releasing them himself, he would have done a lot of editing and brought more stories into it, but it was just a sort of dot point breakdown of his days that he put in his diary, which I'm sure he was going to use later. So that was sad, but I did really love that. Queer Theory, Gender Theory. This Is Me Letting You Go. That was one I listened to on the train to Melbourne once. The Complete Mouse. Dark Room, a memoir in black and white. That was one I picked up from a free library and it was actually very interesting. Persepolis, It Was the Night Shift Before Christmas. It's Totally Normal, an LGBTQIA plus guide to puberty, sex and gender. So I read that one before I offered it to the kids to read. The Passengers by Will Ashen, A Short History of Nearly Everything. So there was a lot of different ones in there. So I definitely read quite a bit more non-fiction than I would normally do. But yeah, still 85% fiction, so that makes sense. Moving on to genres, and my top 5 genres, no surprise to me here. Number 1 is fantasy. Number 2 is sci-fi. Number 3 is manga, which is a new one. I have read a bit of manga over the years, but because my kids are obsessed with them, I'm finding myself drawn to them more and more, and also they're picking up books and I'm reading them as well. So Spy Family, One Piece, I picked up Death Note, loved it. Monster, loved it. It was a good year for manga. The next is romance category, and then LGBTQIA+, which makes a lot of sense. After that, there's contemporary and young adult. As I've said in previous videos, I'm stepping away from young adult a bit. They really have to sound exciting for me to be interested. And the bottom 5 It looks like the least books I read this year, genre-wise, were erotica, education, travel, food and drink, and autobiography, that's funny. I know the erotica is Nikki Gamel. I think that's how you pronounce it. I read The Bride Stripped Bare again and then went on to read the second book, which is classed as the erotica. Education was a Weirdo Mania book. I also track the books that I read with my kids. Interesting that that's education. But yeah, travel, food and drink, and autobiography. The autobiography instead of memoir. That makes sense. The Happiest Man on Earth by Eddie Jaku. That was a good one too. That was really interesting read. So the format. So I've read 54% books in print, 26% in audio, which is a huge jump, and 20% digital, which makes a lot of sense. My most read authors was Jodie Taylor. So Jodie Taylor has 12 books. I've read 12 books in 2023 by Jodie Taylor, which makes a lot of sense. Some of them are short stories, but I've absolutely loved them all. They're so great. I can't recommend her enough. The next two are manga authors, so I'm not going to try and butcher their names. Brandon Sanderson is in there. We've got Corey M. Schramm. She wrote the Dying for a Living series. I gave that a go this year and it was quite good. I did enjoy it. The ending was a little bit but that was a good one, a good series. If you want kick-ass women, kick-ass sapphic women, well, bye. But they're sapphic. Catherine Kerr was introduced to me by one of my wonderful previous work colleagues. We bonded over her and her writing and her insults. They're hilarious. So she wrote the Devery series and they're broken into different time periods. However, they are so down my alley. The Devery series are a great epic fantasy based upon souls and reincarnations and really, really cool. I've not heard anybody talk about them before except for my previous work colleague, and I'm so glad she introduced me to them because yeah, it looks like I read 7 of those last year and I have a few more to go. I think there's about 16 books in this series, so I jumped back into some Brandon Sanderson at the end of the year, but I'll be heading back to those series very, very soon. And the rest are all manga or graphic novels. There's one in there that I know writes Doctor Who graphic novels, so that makes a lot of sense too because I did read a few of those. I love going to the library and seeing how they've restocked every 12 months or so in the Doctor Who graphic novels. Then the number of books and pages, it breaks it down to monthly. It's a very interesting graph to look at. So as you can see, January started off okay. January started off a good month. I usually will read quite a few books in January. Then it kind of branched off. In May we had a bit of a spike. Then it went back down. And then in October, which makes a lot of sense because that was around the time that I was having some mental health stuff going on and I ended up leaving my job, which means that there was a lot more reading. November, there was a bit of a dip in pages read, but I think that I probably read more longer books that month and less manga because I know that in December and October I was smashing the mangas. That would be why my pages read went up. Star ratings, I don't do a lot of reviews on Storygraph. I save that more for Goodreads. But yeah, it says my average rating is 4.14, so I did review 9 books last year on Storygraph with a relatively good average rating, so I can't complain about that. So that's just a really interesting way to track your data over the course of the year. I am a massive data fiend. I will eat it up. So I really love that app just for that reason alone. I also use Goodreads, but I also use an app called Bookmory, which shows a visual of all of the books that you've read in a calendar month on a calendar, which I really, really love as well, just for the aesthetic purpose. So this year I am hoping to read about 200 books. I'm not going back down to 150 because I know that starting this channel, I will probably be prioritizing reading a lot more than I normally would, which is another incentive why I started the channel, despite the fact that I already read enough. However, I also knew that there would be times when I would be quite busy this year, so I thought 200 is going to be quite reasonable. I should be able to manage that. So I've also done 50,000 pages. I probably won't reach for mangas as much this year. I think that this year I really want to focus on finishing series that I've done, finishing series that I've started, and really working through my TBRs, which I will talk about in a little bit. So, I mean, it's probably guaranteed that I will continue to buy the Monster series, and it's probably guaranteed that any books my kids will bring home that are manga, I will pick up if they seem interesting to me. I have to admit, my eldest has My Hero Academia, and I read the first one, and that was it for me. It's not for me. So I'm hoping that they will bring more series like that, so I'm less driven to read their books. Audiobooks wise, I initially gave myself a goal of 100 hours, but I've already nearly met that just in my reading in January. So that's probably because I've been doing a lot of cleaning up around the house and decluttering, and I listen to audios when I'm doing that, but I brought it up to 300 hours because I'm sure that if I can manage that in 1 month, I can probably get well over 300 hours in 12 months, but we'll stick with that goal for now. In regards to genres, I'd really like to read some more nonfiction. I want to bring that up a bit more. I did read a lot of nonfiction last year based on my general consensus, but that's because I was listening to audiobooks while I was working, and I found it easier to sort of separate the two if I was listening to nonfiction, whereas if I was listening to fiction, I would lose track of where I was up to and not understand what was happening. I've got Marie Kondo's book I want to read. I've got a couple of books that I've picked up over the last couple of years that are nonfiction that I'd really love to read, so I want to get those up a little bit more. I also want to read thriller and mystery more, and that is because I go to my local markets, I go to my local free libraries, I'll go to my local library book sales, and a lot of books that I pick up are mystery thriller. So I have so many mystery thriller books that I really need to read, and I'm also going to do like a read and unhaul challenge. So I want to sort of work through my books and just read the first couple of chapters, and if I don't like it, just chuck it. And if I do like it, read them and decide if I'll keep them once I've read them, if I'll read them again, or if I pass them on to someone else. I have some friends that love thriller mystery genre books, so I'm sure that I'll be able to find somewhere to pass them on to. But yeah, I've created these little TBR jars. So this one is for the bookshelf behind me. It doesn't include the books I've recently hauled, which will be another video soon. But compared to that, I really have to focus on my Kindle as well, because this is my TBR for Kindle. That's a lot of books. I don't know why I keep adding more and more and more to my Kindle. It is an addiction. I have a problem. Where is the Kindle Anonymous people? Because this is stupid. There is about 700 books in here, and it's not including the last 40 books that I picked up in the last 2 months on my Kindle. So yeah, bit of a problem there. That's my goal. This year, I want to get through these jars. I want to do read it and unhaul challenges as much as I can. I also have a lot of audiobooks, and because I have Spotify as well as Audible, and I'm utilizing those 15 hours a month on Spotify, let me tell you. One of the big goals I'll have for this year, which you guys will be joining me on those journeys if you feel so inclined to watch, is a unhauling, going through, finally tackling my massive TBRs. So that's going to be an adventure, and I'm trying to ensure that I don't buy too many new books this year unless I am gifted gift cards with the intention to buy books. But yes, the goal this year is to work through my TBR and improve on that. And this lighting is so terrible. I'm sorry, guys. I normally use my phone, and because I had to use my phone, I am on my tablet, and the lighting just doesn't do it. It just isn't quite there. But some other book goals I have for this year, I really want to finish Brandon Sanderson's book series. That, like, I want to get up to date with his works. That's a bit of a feat, but I do have 2 books in the Stormlight Archive series, and the 5th one will be coming out at the end of this year, which is really exciting. I've got 3 books in the Wax and Wayne series that I really want to finish. I've also got the 4th book in the Skyward series, which is his YA works, which I really want to finish up. I also want to get into Steelheart and see if I like that. And then I've also got the Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I haven't got Tress of the Emerald Sea yet, but that's what I do want to read this year as well. I'd also really like to join some book clubs, so I think that I will utilize the book spending money that I have been giving myself over the last few years and invest in joining some book clubs. I think that will be fun. I think that will mean that I will have some really good books on my TBR and that I'll be reading this year. So that's another one. And also I really want to finish the series that I've started because there's so many. It's a little bit, I'm a little bit embarrassed by how many book series I have to finish. So those are my goals. That was my data for last year. Thank you for joining me. If you got this far, I hope that you enjoyed your coffee or your tea or your cuppa, whatever it is you had, and I hope that you have an awesome day. Like and subscribe if you're new. If you have any book reading goals for this year, let me know what they are in the comments. Thank you so much for being here. I've loved spending this time with you, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have an awesome day. Bye, darlings.